say it's alright, 'cause it's good, 'cause it's alright, 'cause it's alright, it's alright, every time, 'cause it's alright, oh, it's alright, we're gonna do this slow.
Welcome to Our Stories Matter. I'm Sam Lasalde.
And I'm Susie Hess.
Our Stories Matter is hosted by Trauma Informed LA and the amazing music by Torrance Brandon Reese, founding member of the music group Street Corner Renaissance. Our Stories Matter at Locals Only acknowledges the Gabrielino and Tongva peoples as the traditional land caretakers of Towangar, the Los Angeles Basin and Southern Channel Islands. We pay our respects to the Honugvetam, our ancestors, Ahihirom, our elders, and Eohinkem, our relatives and relations past, present, and emerging.
Salina Gray has spent 24 years teaching in traditional public, charter, and graduate schools. In 2014, she received her doctorate from Stanford University in curriculum and instruction in science education. Her research focused on the intersection of racial and science identities with an emphasis on critical race theory. Her work has been disseminated at the National Association for Research in Science Teaching, the Teachers for Social Justice Conference, Free Minds, Free People, and the American Educational Research Association. She, along with her colleague and fellow Stanford alumni, Dr. Alexis Patterson, have developed and published an educational framework called Holistic Science Pedagogy. As a trauma-informed teacher, Salina completed her 200-hour certified yoga teacher and is a former lead trainer for the Social Emotional Learning and Facilitation in Breathe for Change yoga training program. Salina completed her training and certification in the Resilience Toolkit through Lumos Transforms, which I have too and is amazing. And most recently, Salina completed the Advocate Training Program for Sisters Mentally Mobilized, a community health project of the California Black Women's Health Project. A proud graduate of Prairie View A&M and Pepperdine University, Salina currently serves as an adjunct faculty member at Mount St. Mary's University, Doheny campus in LA. She is the proud mother of a 26-year-old. And the story of how I met Salina is super cool, I think. So I don't know how many years ago was it? Maybe like 5, you think?
I think so. Yeah, it's been a minute.
So let's say 5 years ago or so, we were both at a screening for Resilience, which is the sequel to Paper Tigers, which both are great documentaries. And we were at the California Endowment, and it was like 250 people. Obviously, this is way before COVID, in the room watching the screening. And then afterwards, there was Q&A. Now, it was like 200 to 250 people. So Salina stands up, and you were so powerful, and you talked like from a personal and a professional level. And I was with a friend of mine, Chantal, and I said to her, I was like, I am going to go meet her. And she's like, go do it. And I just ran across the room because I thought you were so brave, because you talked about your own ACE score. You talked about the impact of education on your own healing. I mean, it was just really brave, which I would never have done. I could never stand up in front of 250 people. So that was about 5 years ago. So I'm super excited to have you here. So welcome, Salina Gray.
Thank you. I'm so excited and grateful and honored and humbled to be here with you all today. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, welcome, Salina. I'm excited to learn a little bit more about you.
Well, thank you. You all make me sound, I want to meet me. I sound pretty interesting the way you describe me. I sound kind of interesting. Not as dull as I thought.
So I wonder if we can just start off, and maybe you can talk about your work related to trauma and healing.
Sure. Once again, thank you for having me. Just full disclosure, it's impossible for me to separate my professional from my personal, because my personal has pretty much determined my professional. So the reason I became a teacher was specifically because I wanted to be the kind of adult who would support and encourage and love and motivate kids like me. Basically kids who grew up in all kinds of dysfunction, the whole Section 8, back in the day, standing in line to get the big loaves of cheese in a brown box. And I start with that because often people think, oh, you've got a lot of education, right? You've got a master's, you've got a doctorate. And they just assume that I grew up in this very sort of middle-class, cushy, stable life. And it was actually quite different. And so I moved around a lot. I think I went to maybe 10 or 11 schools from the time I was in kindergarten to high school. So I don't really have I don't remember teachers. I don't remember even students. What I remember is this idea of school as a place that I felt happy, that I found joy. I was a horrible student. I didn't like school, but I loved school because I felt school was my place. And so that trauma that kind of stuck to me, those first 18 years of my life, I realized that school was a bright spot. And so I wanted to be a teacher so I could provide that kind of space for my students. And so when I went into teaching, I was in the throes of realizing, oh my God, I have some pretty intense, severe depression. And so I was doing all kinds of things in my personal life. And literally everything I was doing in my personal life, I brought into my classroom because I knew my students, many of them were having the same kinds of experiences. And so I was trying to get to them. I didn't really start to do my hardcore work until my 20s and 30s, really. So I'm like, okay, I've got these 8 and 9-year-olds who I know are experiencing some of the same things that I did, that my friends did. Let me kind of get in and help. And so I think I came in with a trauma-informed lens. I didn't call it that. I called it helping people heal, and being aware that my students were acting out, not because they had some kind of predisposition for acting out, but because they were probably trying to process things in the same way that I was.
Whoa, that is super, super powerful. And coming at it from like a collective healing, that you're healing in the same time that they're healing. I mean, that's powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to add to that in that I think, especially being that, it was all centered on what I've done has all been centered on youth development, on gang intervention, and had to face a ton of my own demons as I was growing and moving forward professionally. So I wanted to dive into our next question. We're in a wild place as a nation, just as a people in 2020, and right now we're dealing with this global pandemic, uprisings that have come out, political uprisings. How would you say that has maybe put you in a place where you had to reimagine the work that you're doing and how you'll be moving forward?
Oh, yeah. Because as I said, right, jokingly, but also there's some seriousness, this idea that I'm an analog girl in a digital world, right? And so I acknowledge, I think that my gift or my talent or my skill is really in the personal face-to-face interactions with students. It's not because I do, fabulous things. I don't dress up in, costumes. I don't do, I'm not an exciting kind of teacher, but what I do is I really connect with them in very real ways. And I bring my whole body and my whole being, my spirit, my soul, my likes to my classroom. And that is what I think my students latch onto. And so to have to now go to a space in March where literally it was like the rug was just pulled from under me, because I was thinking, how in the world can I do this online, right? Distance learning, sitting behind a computer screen and hoping that my students will also be on a computer and to engage with them. And so initially I was completely overwhelmed at the prospect. Like I gave myself 2 days just sort of be depressed about it, to be honest. Like, okay, for 2 days, I'm going to lament, cry, complain, like, oh my God, how can I do this? And it wasn't about, can I give them the content? Because I can give them the content online, but I was just thinking about, oh my God, but the social emotional piece is central. That's 95% of what I do, and that has been gone. And so I gave myself a couple days. And then I think that Sunday night before Monday, I was like, how can I recreate or try to recreate that kind of space, the incubator space where I have students who, may be struggling in every single other class, getting in trouble academically and socially. But in my classroom, they kind of shine, right? They shine. And so for me, it was very difficult, but I just tried to envision, how can I create this space online? And so we did circles. I gave them the work like in Google Classroom, but our time together, I really wanted to create a space where kids were like, we talked, what's going on? How are you feeling? What are you concerned about? So it really online became social emotional learning. The distance learning became all about social emotional. Because for me, that is at the heart of this work. Like, that is the heart, because they could get the academics going on YouTube. They could get that anywhere. But what they don't get is the space to speak, to be listened to be seen, and to be heard.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then it stirs so much up for me, because that's been like just difficult for me to adjust to. I've really invested so much into my career and being of service to people, and social welfare, right? Like, that's the biggest piece. It's the social piece. Like, you take that away, what am I doing? I'm sending emails.
Right.
Man, I commend you on that, and being able to do that from what it sounds like as smoothly as you have.
Well, it's been hard, and mainly because not everybody shows up for various reasons, and so there's this frustration with, like, do y'all not? Are folks not thinking about how students? And again, the students I work with students who are historically underserved and marginalized, right? And so my concern is, the ones who show up, they're able to get that, but most of my students were not able to show up for various reasons. There's been this wondering how folks are doing, how they're doing, and then to hear that we're starting the fall online, and it's just like, it's really required some serious just management of my nervous system, because the whole reason I became a teacher was so I could be in the classroom with the babies. And now you've taken that away from me. And so it is requiring me to pull everything I've learned, the ancestors. I'm calling on everything and using everything so that I can keep my nervous system, under control, so I can do the work. So this has definitely been some resilience building for me these last 5 or 6 months, for sure.
It's so powerful, everything you talk about, because number one, no one can learn if they're in their amygdala, right? In their fight, freeze, or flee. No one.
Right.
And so that's why I fell in love with you and your brain, that your focus really was about emotional and social. Because there is no way you can be in your higher brain and learning if you're not feeling safe and connected and regulated. And one of the storytellers in season 1, Hugo Gonzalez, he talked about being a former lifer, and what people can do today with you is just ask, how are you doing?
Right.
And he said he didn't have that. And just to say, how are you? How are you doing? That was it. That's what he was craving. And then hearing you, and that's what you do. You do the social, the emotional, the empathy based. And I think that's so, so important. And especially now, knowing the impact of COVID, significantly on Black and Brown communities, the isolation and the disconnect. And you always brought in mindfulness also. So I just think of everything you did that was needed and is even needed even more now that you're still bringing in. So yeah, I think you're just a major, fierce hero. What is like, I mean, I know this is a deep question because I know some about you, but what is your why for doing the work?
My why. This is my act of revolution. And my conception of revolution is literally this idea of creating a world that has never been. And so I don't have a picture of what that world looks like. I can't show you an example. I just know that it's never been. And so it means that I'd like to think that I've constantly pushed and challenged myself to be bigger than I can imagine, because to help facilitate, create, build a world that's never been, I can't be who I've been, and I can't be beholden to anybody's ideas of what it means to be anything. And so it's kind of a crazy way. My why is like, some people, students will be like, Dr. Gray, you're kind of off. So it is kind of off because it's literally just constantly seeking to just emerge more bigger and bigger, because I know that this world that's never been is going to be bigger than anything I can imagine, and so different. And so that's my why. It's the revolution. And by revolution, I mean a complete and utter explosion. And I don't mean that literally. I mean metaphorical explosion of life as it ever has been, to create something brand new that is buried somewhere within the surface of this sort of world. So that's my why. That's why I don't get tired. That's why quitting is not an option, no matter how hard it gets. And there's been years where it's gotten hard, where the school counselor had to come sit with me in class at lunchtime and provide me therapy, because I would be laid out over my desk crying, feeling like, what am I doing? I can't do this. I'm not getting through, just all of that. But quitting was never an option. And here I am 24 years later, excited, nervous about starting a year remotely. I got a job today, y'all. Nervous about starting a job. Literally today, they called me this morning. But excited, I'm like, yes, So that's my why. My why is for a world that doesn't exist.
Whoa, that's so powerful. So powerful. And last night I was talking to a friend and a colleague, and she was doing research on elementary school and racism. And what she found that was super interesting, and I was thinking this is perfect timing, because I know I was meeting with you today, is that Black students are sent to the principal's office in the morning, where the white students, if they're having any type of issues, are sent to mental health or to the therapist, but in the afternoon. So they're given the benefit of the doubt of, maybe they're going through something, and then they're sent to the therapist.
Right.
Oh my gosh. So when she told me that, and I said, I cannot wait to talk to Salina tomorrow, and I think of your act of revolution. I mean, it is revolutionary, because what we're hearing and seeing is so opposite of what you're talking about.
No, absolutely. I don't know. I wonder subconsciously, I'm the person who people are like, I don't want to go see a movie. Don't go see a movie with Salina, because she's going to totally deconstruct and just ruin it for you, right? Like Disney cartoons, you name it, I will ruin it. And so I think in terms, I'm always thinking about racism, colorism, white supremacy. I mean, that's just, I wake up, it's kind of, who I am. And so I had the sense enough to know that I'm already carrying all of that with me. And so I knew that I had to be very mindful about the schools that I taught in, that I knew that if I know myself enough to know that if I was working at a school where it was more diverse, like the whole Benetton diversity, that it would be a problem for me to have to see explicitly how white students are daily treated differently, AKA better. And so I've only worked at schools that were Black and brown, because it's enough for me to just know about structures and systems. To have to see that all day, every day with the babies, it will be a problem. I can handle it with adults because I've been the only in all white spaces, and but I can't watch y'all. I mean, yeah, that would be, it's enough that the system is as it is, that the Black and brown children on average are being underserved by the education system. But at least, there we can kind of create something. But to see that and then see what you just described, I wouldn't be here probably being interviewed because it would be a problem. It would be a big problem for me because I know that kind of stuff that goes on. And so what my job is to, and my kids know it goes on, even though if it doesn't happen at our schools, they're aware of what's happening. And so that's part of my job is let's talk about this. Let's explain this. Let's make sense of this. And to give them a sense of don't let other people continue to steal their humanity. Like all this going on, these are all lies. That's what this is all lies and myths. And so we're going to break those myths down so that you can know who and what you really are. And it would be I would not be comfortable doing that work, to be honest, unless I was at a school with a bunch of radical teachers who were all collectively doing that work. But that's never been my experience. There's only a few of us every place I've been,
Right. And then hearing you crying on the table because of everything that you're witnessing and hearing and seeing. I mean, yeah. I just think about the impact, right, on teachers. Teachers for sure like you who see everything, who experience everything, who are feeling it, who are empaths. You're an empath and you've experienced a lot of what the students are experiencing. So yeah, being on that table makes so much sense.
I've called the 1-800 hotline a few times early in my career. The first 15 years, I've taught and the kids left and I've gotten my phone out and called the 1-800 depression hotline many a time just because I knew that I needed to bring this back down before starting another day with the babies, because that's the concern. What you have is we're all in crises, more so now. But as the adults, as the teachers, as the admin, as the staff, it's, we set the tone. And so to me, it's so important that I make sure that I'm okay before I try to walk into a classroom. I can't bring all of my trauma, wounded, healing, ugly into a classroom with students who are going through these things. I have the language to make sense of it. I can get resources. They often don't. And so for me, it's always about, I have to show up as healthy as I can for the kids. And I don't dismiss what I'm going through. I just will do a triage, call a 1-800 number, I've taken myself to a psychiatric clinic. Just, can I talk to somebody? Because I'm concerned. Because I don't want to take that to the kids. Because I have, of course, there are days I have, and it's ugly. Yeah. My fight flight meets their fight flight, and it's all bad.
So fight flight, long hours, just working around the clock on this, it being, what you're doing professionally, but also what you're passionate about. Having to literally almost break down and you're crying over everything that you're sorting through. How has this work been healing for you?
Thank you for noticing that, because it is. I feel very honored and I feel so blessed because I know, I'm showing up as my best self, someone who is an example of, intergenerational trauma, personal family, and then you throw on the intergenerational race trauma and the economic trauma. That I'm working through that and I'm showing up. I tell students how I can relate to their experiences. So part of the healing comes from sharing our stories when we feel we have the capacity to share without being submerged, of course. And so there's healing in me being able to interact with the students on these common experiences. Because at first they're like, oh, you've got Dr. Gray, especially since I've had the doctor. They think I'm just some raised in Malibu and whatever, that life. And then when they learn, like, oh my God, she actually was raised by her grandma. Oh my God, she moved around a lot. Oh my God, she slept in the living room on a mattress. Oh my God. And so that's part of the healing. And I can feel their sigh of relief. I can feel their openness. And that gives me healing because it lets me know I'm on the right path. When I have students, middle school students, mind you, who come out to use my classroom to come out as lesbian and bisexual, and no one laughs, and kids are like, wow, you're brave. I know that there's some healing that they're feeling, and when they're healing, it's also healing me. When I have, parents who thank me and say, oh, now, my kid likes science, or, thank you for you're the first teacher to believe in my kid, even though they're failing everything, but now they think they can. And so now they want to try harder. So all of that, because again, this is sort of my active revolution, personal and, larger, the healing comes with seeing the impact of me putting myself out, because I put myself out there. I don't want my kids to have a false idea of who I am and where I've come from. And they validate me. So that heals me. I don't, the adults, whatever. The kids give me so much validation. And it's, I think, in turn, because I give them so much validation. So there's just a beautiful symbiotic relationship. And I see myself in them, and hopefully they see their future selves in parts of me that, okay, whatever I'm going through right now, Dr. Gray still became Dr. Gray. Dr. Gray still became a teacher. Dr. Gray is happy. Dr. Gray, I introduced them to my adult son, and they're like, oh my God, and she raised a son who's really cool, So it's this mutual symbiotic sort of give and take between me and my students. Like I honestly, the adults, and that's what I have to learn. I've got to learn to engage more with the adults, because it really is, when I'm on a campus, it's all about the students and me. It really is.
That's a beautiful thing. I mean, it's been my experience as well with the different projects that are taken on with youth development, gang intervention. Those kids are me, and I'm them, and so that's what'll keep me going through the long hours, through the extra.
Yes.
I'll work on the weekends, like all that. I'm doing this for them, which is ultimately me.
Beautifully said. Yes, absolutely.
And you being incredibly authentic and real. And I love that, of course, they're going to see you and them, that there's hope, right? And I think so many of these episodes, to be honest, I feel, give hope. So if there's a youth listening to this, there is hope. You can go through Hell and Back a million times, and you can be a Dr. Gray. And so just having hope, and hope decolonizes. The powers that be don't want us to have hope. There is hope.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, just hearing you. I mean, it's inspirational too, because you think I'm never going to get out of this. Just in my own personal domestic violence situation, I kept thinking I'm never going to get out of this. And then seeing someone who did get out of this and what she was doing, I imagined myself in her. I'm like, someday I will be where she is. And, that was the hope. So they're so lucky and fortunate to have you. And I'm sure you would say, well, I'm fortunate and lucky to have them, which is where the symbiotic, sort of relationship happens. And yeah, it's so real. And I'm curious for you, like what, since we're virtual, a global pandemic that's impacting, Black and Brown communities the most, the revolution. What is new for you? I know you got a job today, which I'm super excited about.
Right.
But what is new for you in all of this now?
It's interesting. And again, I totally respect and understand wherever people are, right? I have folks I know who are like, this has just completely leveled them. They feel leveled, and they're not into this whole learn a new skill and learn a new trade and use this downtime. So I totally respect and understand that. And I don't mean to minimize that experience. My experience has been very different. And I think, and I just getting so emotional. Like this has been the best time of my life, which is crazy. Although I have not been able to be with the students, I've been able to be with myself and to just kind of stop for a second and just like realize and be grateful, because I didn't think I was going to live to like be 21 or 22. So as a kid, I had no thoughts of what adulthood would look like, because I just didn't imagine it. And so this year I've been able to sit and say, oh my God, I've surpassed 21 by 28 years. And so I was like, what do? I just did not plan to be here this long. And so I've been able to sit and just look at this life. that I didn't even know I was creating, and to just be so grateful. And the thing that I'm most grateful for is that I feel that I am, helping. I hate the verb helping. There's a better word, but I feel that I literally am having an impact. And I just never imagined, even being 9, being like, when I grow up, I'll be a teacher, because people kept asking, like, what are you going to be? And I'd never thought about it. But then I moved on and did all kinds of other things that were the opposite of becoming a teacher. But to think that I've grown up and I've not just become an adult, but I've become an adult who's having impact, no matter how small that impact is, even if it's just 1 student a year or 2 students a year who write me these beautiful letters thanking me. And so this time has forced me to just sit and be quiet and look at my life. And that's what's changed, because I'm a go, raising my son, teaching full time in grad school with a part-time job. So there's been no time, and loving it because it kept me busy, right? But that's what's been new, to actually kind of just sit and be able to reflect on my life and to just give so much gratitude, because I made it. I mean, I've made it, And it's like, wow, I finally realized it. And so now I feel like I have even more, and I'm going to go back in the fall, like, I don't know. I don't have plans. I just know that I'm going to do bigger and better things that are going to be more helpful, that are going to have more impact. And I feel like I can do it. So that's what's new. Like, I don't doubt myself anymore. Like, I know I can.
You gave me the goosebumps, and and I have so many inside voices of conversations Sam and I have had in the past of not knowing how long you would be in this world. And I think it was the last episode, with Lanisha. So, but she was talking about the same, so many people died around her. She didn't think that she would be living to this day. And then, I was saying, a friend of mine years ago said she used to talk about who would be her makeup artist for when she died. I mean, those were the conversations. And so just hearing your thoughts from then, and then where you are today, and then your reflections. Yeah, it's so powerful to feel.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Salina, what does it mean for you to address trauma through mindfulness, through the work that you're doing?
The way I think about trauma is, rather than sort of something happening, but kind of how I respond to it. And so what mindfulness has done for me, and which I attempt to share with my students, is to really cause me to just to again, sit with myself, right? Recognizing. So I think of trauma and self-awareness going together, because the self-awareness is what allows me, or allows one, to sort of notice how we're feeling, right? People rarely ask folk, in my experience at least, how are you? And like really want to know, where they really want to know how you are. And so for me, the first part of my trauma work is really asking myself constantly, how am I? It's a daily practice, because while I am, pretty settled and have done a lot of trauma work to work through my stuff, there's still so much to excavate. And so the mindfulness, which I think of as just being present in my moment, because I'm a time traveler. And I think I would guess a lot of folks who come from difficult pasts probably do a lot of time traveling, where there's so many triggers, and I don't even know what all the triggers are. And so the mindfulness forces me to not go there, just stay right here. Even if it's just to sit right here. I mean, sometimes I'll just hum, because the pull to go back and feel that trauma and experience it again can be so strong. I'll just hum. I'll grip something. I mean, I literally will do anything to keep myself present. And that is the mindfulness. How can I stay present? And then I might try something to kind of bring myself back down. And then, depending on how I feel, I will play with that whatever that trigger was, whatever that trauma that was triggered, I'll play with a little bit. But I'm very mindful, again, of when it's becoming too much. And this happened yesterday, actually. My fiance and I were talking about childhood stuff, and it started out like happy childhood memory. We were laughing about this meme about basically latchkey kids, how parents now are like, oh, I can't leave my kids home for a couple of hours. But I know me and all my friends, we'd be home all day, every day, and it wasn't a thought. And so that was the funny part. But then we were going to swap some stories, and I felt, and I literally had to say, I can't talk about this right now, because I knew it was going to take me over the edge. And so the mindfulness, the being present, is what allowed me to say, it's funny, it's a lighthearted conversation, but I feel something welling up in my heart. And I think this could end very badly for me. And so I'm going to stop. And so for me, the mindfulness, the presence, the way that it has helped me sort of navigate and heal is by learning, number one, recognizing things that are triggering me and setting up boundaries for myself, saying, I can't go here right now. I can't go here right now. Maybe another day I'll venture back to this, but today it's too much. And so that's how my resilience, I think, has grown. My window of capacity, as they say, my window of tolerance has grown because I'm recognizing it faster. I'm not forcing myself to relive these traumatic experiences. If I'm not up for it, I stop. And if I am, I will go through it. So that's kind of how, just really trying to stay in the present so that I always know what's going on and how things are impacting me, my mood, how I'm feeling. And if it feels like it's too much, I stop.
It's amazing because I think it's so easy to go back there. Well, for me, it's very easy to go back there. And especially now that domestic violence cases are through the roof because of COVID, it's easy for me to start going back. So I'm just curious how you bring the mindfulness into the classroom for the students also, because it's clear the power of mindfulness. I mean, I'm a big mindfulness supporter. Right. So how do you bring it into the classroom, and what do the youth, what do they experience? What is it like for them?
Right. I'm a big lover of, we call it circle time. So we do circles. And where students, the idea is just getting them to be in a space where they can talk uninterrupted about what they're thinking or what they're feeling in the present. And so that may not seem, pretty significant in the pantheon of mindfulness techniques and practices. But what my students always say is, thank you for letting us just talk and for not interrupting us and not telling us what to do and not giving us advice and not trying to fix things, because that's what they want. They want to just be able to talk about what is going on right now. And so I do monthly circles. Sometimes we do them weekly. Actually, usually we do them twice a month, but on occasion, students will request them. And like I've had a couple of times where students came in and said, Dr. Gray, can we have a circle today? And I'm like, of course. So I'm thinking, oh my God, there's something that the student wants to share. And it's they just wanted to be in circle and just talk about food, talk about a movie, talk about, and so it's not even about that it has to be always deep and, emotional and psychological. They just don't get to be heard. And that's something I think I've gotten from a lot of young people. It's hard to be mindful if folks are always making demands and judgments and have all these expectations. You can't ever how can you be centered when you've got people pulling you in all these different directions? So the big thing in my class is just affirming who you are right now. So even when students talk about, well, last year I stop it. I'm like, let's talk about now. So it's really just getting them to think about being in the present, because often they're not. They're living in the past. They're living in the future. So circle is that's my main practice. And I do a lot of affirmations. We have a daily affirmation that says, that has verbs are, am, not were, not will be, not gonna be, not when I grow up, am, are. Who am I? I am a scientist. I am a warrior. I am a scholar. And this is what I am doing. So I use a lot of present tense language. So that's how I try to create a culture of mindfulness. How are you feeling right now? And then every day I tell them it's a clean slate. So I tell them, don't bring up yesterday to me. Like, you should have handled that yesterday. Today's a new day. Let's start now. So that's kind of, that's what I do.
I love that. I love the verb tense in terms of the present moment, which is really cool. And also it reminds me, I was watching United Shades of America last night with Love. I don't know if either of you saw that last night.
No.
So you probably had other things going on, but this is being COVID. But anyway, he went to Ohio and he was in the schools. I mean, everything was like so serendipity because it was all like yesterday that it was all schools. And one of the teachers talked about, she didn't call it the circle, which is what I loved. I forgot what she called it, but she basically said, we start every class with just talking about whatever's on your mind. Because if we don't do that, you're not going to be able to learn. And so, and you go even a step further where you're like, not only what's on your mind, but how can your mind be present? Because if your mind isn't present and you're thinking of an hour ago or in like a few hours after school, you won't be able to retain. You can't be in your higher brain. So obviously, I love you and I think everything you do is just incredible. I love the verb. I'm going to actually incorporate the verb check-in with students at USC because they're all going through it, of course. They were going through it before and now they're going through it even more. So how do you see what you're doing, which is community healing? How do you see that as political work?
I probably don't see it as political work, to be honest, but I can see how people do because people tell me that it is. And I think it's because, as I guess I'm a social justice educator. My thoughts are that my role is kind of a both and. So, and there are people who hate this. They think that I'm, not being hard enough, but this is where I am, which is the reality. Because I'm mindful and I live in the right now, right? Even though I want this world that has never been, I'm living in the now, right? It would serve me no purpose to live in this world that has never been or to live in the future. So living in the right now, the reality is there are particular systems and structures in place, AKA testing, AKA grades, AKA graduation. Okay. So my goal in the present, in the right now, day to day, is to equip my students with the skills and strategies to be successful, independent, and have agency in terms of their outcomes in the now, right? So if I'm a science teacher, and if I'm a science teacher who's not teaching them the skills and processes of science, teaching them engineering principles, teaching them, helping them develop scientific critical science literacy, then I am doing them a great disservice and I'm not being socially just, right? So there's that part. And I need to also be equipping them with the skills, strategies, tools, and language to completely disrupt and upend this very system that I am equipping them to have agency in, right? Because I don't know if that makes sense, but it's a both and I often, come across people who it's either or. Either you're trying to overthrow the system or you're a part of the system. And the reality is these kids they're kids, right? And so what we do with them in a year, in a day matters. And I just can't imagine students leaving my class and not having the foundation to decide, I think I want to be a doctor. I think I want to be an astronomer. Like, I don't want anyone to look back on my class and say, dang, I didn't learn any science. Because the revolution has not happened yet. So next year, what's going to happen to these kids? I don't want them to look back and say, okay, now I'm in 9th grade science. Oh, dang, we're all still here. And I didn't learn any science in 8th grade. And so there's this tension of, I want them to be these 21st century learners, but I also want them to critique this very system that has said this is what a 21st century learner is. And so it's a constant tension. And it's the one I feel, right? I know I'm part of the system because I'm a teacher in a public school, and so it's always something I'm always trying to, so how can I do this in a way that honors the legacy of liberation, and what does that look like? And for me, it's not as clear cut as it might be for folks, because I'm working with kids, and the reality is I just don't, it would be a great disservice if my kids, just are not prepared to do whatever they want to do in life,
Yeah. And especially now, right, with all the science haters, I'm so happy that you are teaching them the critical thinking skills. I mean, this is always been needed, and even more so that there's people questioning science and facts. That's incredibly powerful.
And you're doing all this amazing work and helping them learn these different mindfulness practices, helping them sort through a lot of their own healing. But how do you see your work as community healing?
Thank you. I think in part because the community has many levels, and I see my students. We have our little classroom community, but I'm always thinking of their families, which is part of the community, and their families exist within these systems and structures, which is community. And so I think a part of it is school can be a traumatic experience for folks for many different reasons. And sometimes that trauma can go back generations, and I know that as a, first generation college kid, I think the first thing is that I honor what my students bring, and in honoring them and letting them know I honor them, and I'm honoring your families. And so I have really explicit, I'm not deep, I'm really explicit, because I'm not deep. I have to be explicit. So I'll literally have conversations with students that talk about judgment and respectability politics. And so we've had conversations about all types of professions, literally specific professions. And my kids will be like, oh, her mama is this and her daddy is this and her uncle's this, her sister. And we stop and we have conversations about how everybody, regardless of what they do, first of all, is worthy of respect. Because people, no matter who they are, how they roll, you respect folks' humanity. And then we go into what that means and what that looks like and why that's important. And so I think important part of community healing from a school setting is making families feel welcomed. And so I know in the communities I've taught in, parents often don't feel welcome because of their background, their history, what they do. Because many have told me this. And the students are embarrassed and ashamed because the school is very much, it has this idea of what a good person does and what they look like. And so we blow all of that out of the water. And so I think that's the first level of the community healing, which is saying, I honor you and value you, and I honor and value your families because you are of them and from them. And also, I actually do literal activities where the students have to go home, and because I know that my students, many like me, don't live in traditional, families, I'll just say find someone 18 and over and do this thing with them. Sometimes it's interview. Ask them about what school was like for them. Ask them if they think racism is a real thing and examples. And so I really try to encourage the students to get the stories from the people in their community outside of the class. And then I'll have them sometimes go home and teach the things we learn. We do something called Mental Health Monday. And Mental Health Monday, we talk about neuroscience, stress, depression, anxiety. I teach them different techniques like the A to Z of dealing with stress and anxiety. I will often encourage students to take this thing you learned and go teach somebody, and then ask them what it was like for them. So that's my attempt to get at community healing, by taking what we're doing in class outside of the classroom and having the students, empowering them to take it to their families. And I'll often get stories where my kids will be like, yeah, my mom said this, and then we did this, and it was like she said, it was like something that Dr. Gray taught you. So I literally will hear stories of parents, grandparents, uncles telling kids something and having those kids come and tell me. And so that's my way of attempting to sort of work at community healing.
Wow. Wow. I love that. And I can imagine there'll be many more Mental Health Mondays after hearing you. And the topics, I mean, that's amazing. You could do a whole like webinar just on that to be, sort of train the trainer, because this is so huge and so needed. I'm wondering if listeners were like, all right, how can we be like a Dr. Salina Gray? They want to practice mindfulness, or they want to start incorporating mindfulness. What would you recommend as like a first step?
I think the first step is to sit with yourself. I mean, that was my first step. I was very young when I took that first step. And there was a long time between the first and second step because I was so young. So as an adult, I'd like to think my first step, it wouldn't take me so long. But I would say just to kind of sit with yourself, be honest, like, how am I feeling? Like, really, how am I feeling? And then having that conversation. And then the other question is, what do I need? Because once I realized, as a teenager, I was like, oh, I'm clinically depressed. That's how I'm feeling. And so the next years was all about, how do I not be clinically depressed, right? And it took me all kinds of routes to not be clinically depressed. But that's the second question, is how am I feeling and what do I need? And being honest with yourself without judgment is the key. The key is to suspend any judgment, because the judgment starts, and then the judgment will determine what you say you need. Or you might say, well, I don't really need anything. I can do it all on myself, which I've been that person who's like, oh, I've read all these books, so I don't really need to go to therapy. And so, but it was the judgment I had of, even though I was all compassionate and empathetic to everyone else, on myself, I was like, less compassionate. So for me, it would be to just sit and be like, how am I feeling and what do I need? And you've got to do it without judgment. And if you can't do it without judgment, go sit with a friend and have them kind of help you and support you through those questions. But it has to start with you. You don't want folks telling you what's wrong or what's right and what you need. You gotta decolonize like this whole idea that we put ourselves in everybody else's hands for everything. Like, we have the power, right? That is, we have this sort of inborn resilience because we are here, right? We're here. And so take some of your power back. Take that power back and ask yourself these questions so that you can have agency. For me, that's the first step of liberation. So when people say, do you feel free? I feel hella free. I feel hella free. And it's mainly because I know that if I start freaking out, I can just sit back and take 30 seconds of deep breathing and I'm good to go. So to me, that is like some power, and nobody can take that from me. But if I hadn't asked myself, what do I need? What's going on with me? I would have never gotten to this place.
It's comforting hearing you delineate, draw out these action steps, because I've shared with Susie and possibly in a couple of our interviews that my healing journey, a big component of it that helped me through a lot of the early stages was mindfulness. I didn't know that's what it was at the time, but I had my mentors who were encouraging me to journal. And they said, this doesn't matter if you misspell anything. It doesn't matter if you have fragmented sentences. Like, just put it all out there. And yeah, so again, it's just comforting to know, hey, okay, I was on the right track.
Oh no, absolutely, absolutely. And I always assumed that everybody was doing that, and it wasn't until like later that I realized a lot of folks haven't journaled. A lot of folks haven't sat and said, what's going on or how do I feel? And I guess I've lived in this weird bubble because my survival depended on it. I just assumed everybody else was doing it. And so I love that. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. I'm with you.
Speaking of being reflective and journaling, right? What has it been like for you to tell your story today?
It's been like a baby roller coaster, like not like Camp Snoopy. So it hasn't been like a roller coaster, but it's been like a little baby, because there are moments where I have felt things welling up. But being able to, again, I feel so seen. So number one, and I think that's a big part of my struggle and the struggle of folks I've worked with, is that folks don't feel seen. They don't feel heard. And so number one, just I feel so seen and heard and supported. And so, you know, the little girl Salina in me, that's kind of my my avatar, right, of my trauma. Is there's this little girl, I even know what she has on, that's kind of sitting inside of me, you know, and I can see her kind of exhaling a little bit. And so it's been, it feels that there's some shifting going on. Like my nervous system is settled because you all have held this space. And so it just, again, speaks to the importance that even someone who's been doing this work for decades, who last week, you know, held space with 600 participants and is going to hold space for 4 groups, that there is still, you know, I still have the need for healing, that it's literally a lifelong journey. And so I think that's what today has also reminded me. And, you know, there are moments I got emotional. There are moments that pain, that gnawing that I feel still came up. And so it's good because it lets me know that I'm on the right track, because I'm still constantly trying to read books and go to, you know, online lectures and journaling, doing things to keep working. And so this has really confirmed that. But I feel very supported and seen, which is what I think that little girl needs. That's part of how she heals, is because people acknowledge that, oh my God, you're there. And so that's how I feel. It's been good.
I'm really happy that, you know, I've mentioned earlier being torn a little bit about all this, these virtual sort of shifts with a lot of our work. But I'm really glad that being that we're virtual, still that was able to be reflected, that we can hold this space with you.
Absolutely. And I thank you all very much.
Our Stories Matter is brought to you by Trauma Informed LA, whose mission is to foster resilient communities that promote healing and well-being through collaboration, education, and community engagement. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Trauma Informed LA, and our website, traumainformedla.org. Please give us 5 stars on iTunes so more folks can have access, and donate to traumainformedla.org so we can keep recording and healing through our storytelling episodes.